Chap- Chapter 25, Lunar Calendars. The first engraved rocks and stone tools yet found to date from 300,000 BC. This was at the very beginning of Homo sapiens during the early Neanderthal period in second interglacial glacial Europe. These permanently marked stones are believed to be time markers, moon time markers, and were without doubt engraved by females. So as Thompson notes, the human is miniaturizing her universe into symbolic form. Thousands of similar pieces of stone and bone have been found, dating from the later Old Stone Age, circa 30,000 BC. These are marked with long and often complex sequences of notches and scratches, an elaboration of the earliest Neanderthal engraved stones. Many prehistorians have dismissed these marks as decorations. Does this sound familiar by now? But Alexander Marshak, an American archaeological writer, decided to study these marks systematically under a microscope. He found the signs to be deliberately made, the tiny grooves cut in differing depths, widths, and shapes. Scratches on one pebble or bone were made with differently shaped tools. Marshak concluded that the marker changed to a new tool, often cutting at a new angle, with each change of the moon phase. One piece of bone records 6 months on one side, 6 months on the other. This system has been undergoing refinement since the Neanderthal engraved rocks of 300,000 BC. It was a complicated notation for recording factual data, timekeeping, phase, and cycle marking, and it was in use in Europe tens, indeed hundreds of thousands of years before what is called true writing appeared in the Near East, sometime in the late 4th millennium BC. This notation and the lunar calendar recorded was the invention of women. Marshak has studied another form of timekeeping, the lunar calendar stick. Originally perhaps carved from bone, later of wood, the sticks were an elaborate record of the lunar year. One such calendar stick that Marshak spotted in an 1828 portrait of a Winnebago chief was 53 inches long with 4 sides or faces. Vertical marks are etched into it at regular intervals. Above them are small crescents and dots. These sticks were complex lunar tally sticks that marked the lunar year, brought the lunar year into phase with the solar year, and noted the times of rituals. So far, Marshak has found that at least 5 calendar sticks from 3 different Native American tribes. Such sticks appear in Paleolithic cave paintings dating from 50,000 BC. They are held by women and shamans, and later became the magician's wand. Abbe Bruel named the stick Le Bâton de Commandement, suggesting it was an insignia of male rulership or power. But in fact, as a lunar measuring instrument, the stick derives from women's earliest moon phase engravings on rock and bone. In Thompson's words, the owner of the baton is not a man, the mighty hunter, but the midwife. The midwife, of course. But it was her job, the job of every pregnant woman, to know exactly when babies were due. Anthropologists have described the keeping of lunar calendars specifically by women among Australian Aborigines, 6 Siberian tribes, and the Yurok Indians of North America. Australian women used notched sticks. Among past and present day Siberians, Nagazens, Entses, Dolgans, Chukchi, Koraks, and Kets, pregnancy has the duration of exactly 10 lunar months. And it has always been women who kept the lunar calendars, making those months off towards a safe full-term birth. Yurok women kept menstrual calendars and were certainly typical of other Native American women in both hemispheres. The Yurok count was kept by dropping a month stick in each lunar month into a second basket until they reached a count of 10. With this method, they could predict births within a day, a crucial accuracy among early hunting and gathering people on the move. The count was also useful in connection with abortion. As Thompson says, it is perfectly reasonable to assume that menstruation, lunar calendars, and midwifery are as such or more at the foundation of human science than man, the great killer, so celebrated by the macho anthropologists. And in fact, this does make sense, the kind of clear, simple sense that is so easily overlooked. The biblical idea that humanity began with a crime of disobedience is wrong. The capitalist Darwinian notion of human intellect begins with a clever act of self-interested murder and plunder and self-aggrandizement is wrong. The macho anthropological belief that human life and human brain evolved through interventions, discoveries, and experiences of male hunter alone is all wrong. Human life begins with birth, and human culture and intelligence began with birth and with females' experience of surviving pregnancy and bearing children and keeping them alive. The possession by the Winnebago Indian chief of a lunar calendar stick as part of his insignia of power, along with an axe and neck pendant, shows that this ruling power derives from the ancient time of female power. Thompson again points out that priests and shamans must always dress as women to take on women's original magic, and that Aboriginal men worldwide were put through imitation childbirth and menstruation rituals for the purposes of initiation. The fact that the baton was taken over by men in the militarist cultures of patriarchal civilization may, in fact, indicate that they took it over because it was a most ancient symbol of feminine power. So, at the very beginning of the Upper Paleolithic, women, Neanderthal women, apparently knew that lunar periods were of a certain length and were repeated regularly, and that the phases were roughly predictable within a day or two. Cro-Magnon women in 30,000 BC had formed a conception of a lunar calendar and were working out a lunar calendar. By the end of the Paleolithic age, circa 10,000 BC, they could predict the seasons of the year, the phases of the moon, the annual migrations of animals, birds, and fish. When Neolithic people settled in village sites, they began building their calendars, stone circles that were to be used for lunar and solar observations as well as religious ceremonies. Or perhaps it was the other way around. Perhaps the ceremonial observatories, these power centers formed of fixed points of stone, were the loci that gave rise and settled farming communities that replaced the nomadic food gatherers and hunters. It is not far-fetched to think that women invented symbolic and abstract notation, observational science, and early mathematics. Early women's thought processes, and early man's too, were still organic, still rooted in nature and practical experience, not alienated or born of a desire to conquer nature. Organic, rational thought emerged from a desire to cooperate with the natural world and from a real integral observance of the needs and rhythms of the personal self and the human community. It also emerged from a free mind, free of inhibitions, blocks, and dogmas imposed by later patriarchal religion and cultures. The implications of this association of women and the moon would suggest that women were the first observers of the basic periodicity of nature, the periodicity upon which all later scientific observations were made. Women was the first to note a correspondence between an internal process she was going through and an external process in nature. She is the one who constructs a more holistic epistemology in which subject and object are in sympathetic resonance and with one another. She is the holistic scientist who constructs a taxonomy for all the beneficial herbs and plants. She is the one who knows the secrets of the time of their flowering. The worldview that separates the observer from the system he observes, that imagines that the universe can be split into mere subjectivity and real objectivity, is not of her doing. She expresses the withness of the body that Whitehead tried to rediscover in his philosophy of organism and process. Here is the philosophy that stood before the speculations of the Prestocratics. She, Holy Mother Church, which Descartes challenged when he cut the umbilical cord between philosophy and the church and split reality into the res extensa and the res cogitans. The reason the Venus of Losel or the modern day Virgin of Guadalupe are pictured with the crescent moon is that women and the moon are a single mystery. The mystery is and was in reality. All original real mystery was observed, studied, pondered, and participated in by original and real human beings. Mystery was not used as a tool of fear or oppression, of confusion and power, but was used gratefully as ceremonial food by the evolving human intelligence, led by an observational intelligence of women. In the Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets, Barbara G. Walker reminds us that the Ma thesis means mother wisdom and originally referred to divination by the stars. Worldwide, in ancient and modern languages, the word Ma means mother. The first astrologers and mathematicians, meaning learned mothers, were women. The Lunda people of African Angola tell a girl who discovered a method for measuring long distances and boundary disputes. In her daily task, she wove wickerwork doors for huts from leather strips, measuring them a thumbnail wide. She noticed that an oxhide could be cut into a continuous strip to cover a great distance, and that all oxhides produce strips of similar length. So she suggested the strips be used as standard units of measurements by her tribe. Certainly measuring amounts of stored food, estimating how much could be used on a daily basis to feed certain number of people through the lean months of the agricultural year, gave Neolithic women profound experience in mathematical calculation. Life depended on it. Geometry and the human image were originally two expressions of the same divine image, the body of the universe. Number emerged from sensory matter. To the ancients, number was founded in real and concrete human experience and did not possess abstract universality or objectivity. The megalithic yard of the stone monument builders was 2.72 feet, the measurement of the human stride. Throughout classic antiquity, measurements were based primarily on parts of the human body, the foot, the hand span, and the finger joint. The Chinese word for mathematics, swan, is no older than Confucius, circa 600 BC. Units of linear measure were codified into abstractions gradually, a process perhaps begun in Babylon, circa 2500 BC. In Western artistic creation, we've inherited a tradition of ideal forms and measurements that uses a numerical system exploited during European Renaissance. This tradition can be traced back to Pythagoras, circa 550 BC, who developed a kind of mathematical mysticism out of megalithic philosophy. He acquired his knowledge and perhaps his methods also from Thracian wise women. Pythagoras, like mathematicians after him, came to believe that mathematics is not just a language describing nature, but is inherent in nature. All things are numbers. Numbers are the first principle, indeed, the very elements of the things of nature. Thus, for the Western world, a description was abstracted from substance and deified into an objective system. Thus, Pythagoras introduced logical reasoning rather than organic reasoning into the domain of religion and ritual, laying the foundations for the later intellectual theology of Christian scholars in the Western world in general. This combination of mathematics and theology characterizes religious philosophy in classic Greece, in medieval Europe, in Reformation and modern times. Consequently, God was no longer intuition or ecstatic vision, not profound ontological experience, but a kind of rational machine explained by a few scholarly men. Plato, St. Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, Descartes all inherited this numerical philosophy and shared a logical admiration of the timeless and static, ultrally transcendent and aloof pure spirit of the Father God. Utterly abstracted from flesh and earthly cycles, this Father God was unappealable as pure number. Pure number is always elevated above the messy world of mere life. During 300 years of witch hunts in Europe, this rationalistic theology was used as a legal and clerical weapon against what still remained of the ancient women cultures. Medieval scholars not only debated endlessly and in dead earnest about how many angels could dance on the head of a pin during obscene torture, priests and civil judges also hounded their female victim with obsessive questions about the precise number of imps she employed, the total number of times she had intercourse with the devil, the exact size and length of his member, and so forth. The dogmatic insistence on number was supposed to cast an aura of rationality and objectivity around their otherwise bizarre and sick proceedings. In modern forms, e.g., psychological measurements, behavioral norms, notions of quantifiable sanity and adjustment, deified number is still used as a power tool against social deviance. In contrast, Eastern mysticism, like European pagan orientation and primal orientation everywhere, understands mathematics as one part of our conceptual map, a means of apprehending one part of reality, but not an abstractable feature of reality itself. Reality is undifferentiated, constantly moving and cyclic, like the moon.